Welcome, I'm Darren, and I'll be your guide today as I look at the 1994-95 Topps basketball set. Topps was evolving quite a bit in the mid-1990s, which they absolutely needed to, because as late as 1991, they were still making archaic cards, and the whole hobby had passed them by. In 1992, they did upgrade the cards a little bit, but the big thing was that they shifted over to the gimmick of having parallels, which was almost entirely brand new. And it did an amazing job of turning Topps back into a name brand that everybody could recognize. And by 1993, they were able to continue to ride that horse, but the hobby was once again moving past them, and they were going to have to catch up, and in a hurry, and especially in basketball, because basketball was a very flashy area in sports cards. It was the most exciting space in cards, and well, Topps was anything but that. And so they knew that they were going to have to do something special to really revive the cards, because the parallel, the gold foil parallel, could only do so well. But Topps still had just become a secondary company in this amazing card market. And so for the 1993-94 Topps card for basketball, they made a very well upgraded card that was now starting to have a design, a richness to their design that was very distinct and very strong for the era. The cards weren't still flashy. They weren't cards that were standing out amongst all of the great cards of the year, but they were getting to be a lot better. And by the 94-95 basketball card set for Topps, they were now finally starting to think in a way that could make the cards be very bold and different. Not necessarily flashy, but cards that had all of the edge that you want for a card to have to look like it's a serious card. And the 94-95 card definitely does that. It has this great brushstroke effect around the border of the card, which gives a dynamic quality to it that makes it very strong and, well, very, very distinct. They also have a slight, almost like a team color shadow around two sides of it that gives an extra element to the card that adds some richness, as well as a touch of team spirit to it. A little bit of text down at the bottom with another team color, and then they have the gold foil for the player name in kind of a, not a signature text, but in kind of a freehand text. So here they had a card that now finally had all of the qualities that it needed to look like a special card. Again, not a flashy card, but a card that could stand out amongst the hobby as a really good, well-designed card. At least it was definitely that. But the thing that Topps was all about by this time was parallels, but Topps Gold, which was one per pack, was already pretty passé, because we were getting really difficult to get parallels that were coming through in card sets like Upper Deck, where you could get a card where the parallel was one per box. It was really quite challenging. And so Topps needed to make their parallel cards a lot more valuable, once again, like they had been in 1992. By 93, the Topps Gold cards weren't that important because there were far more difficult things to chase. So in 1994, the parallel upgraded to a 1 in every 4 card pack, which made it a lot harder to collect the set, and it was called Spectrite. And this was a card where the whole background was, it was given kind of a foil, kind of almost a chromed quality to it that was very distinct. And then the gold foil was replaced by a gold holofoil, which allows this card to almost glow in a way. This is a card that is fun to kind of explore, but just the way that it looks is always different. This is one of the most distinct parallels ever. It's really, really impressive. And it was a great thing because Topps needed something that was very distinct, very clear, very obvious, something that was going to stand out in any space and was going to catch somebody's eye and draw them in. Topps Gold did that in 92, but not in 93. So in 94, Spectrite was doing exactly that. It was doing an amazing job with it. And like with Topps Gold, it was the complete card set, including the checklists, which were replaced by players again. And in this case, both Chris Webber and Mitch Richmond showed up in Series 2. So some pretty big high rollers for checklist replacements. But this card set was, It was a card set that was built with kind of a weird. It wasn't as well structured as so many other card sets had been. This one had kind of a free-form quality. Now the rookie cards were done the way they'd been done the previous year. They just have a logo on the front, a little foil logo that says draft, but on the card back, it's a completely different card back style, which was a 1993 staple. 1994, they continued that. They also had their all-star cards, and for these cards, they have kind of a back-to-school quality where they have like fabric on the side that's kind of torn. That's kind of the spirit of it. With, I guess it's kind of like cut out letters, which works. It's an interesting approach that actually does read pretty well. It's not a great looking card, but it has its own interest, which is really cool. And as is pretty much typical, they have the East and the West with different color themes on them, which obviously align with the teams. So you feel like they're two separate teams as opposed to just a bunch of all-stars that are all, kind of like an all-pro team. But along with that, they also have cards for the All-Star Weekend. So whether it's award winners or the three-point contest winner, those types of cards were done with a similar torn fabric. But here they use green, and they use it on both sides of the card, so it has a slightly different feel, but at least it does kind of feel like a part of the family. And then they had one set that was really interesting, which is League Leaders. But this subset is one that I didn't even know what it was until I was doing this video. I'm doing the video and I'm just trying to figure out what are these things, and I realized, oh, they're League Leader cards. That's what they are. Because on the front, the design isn't designed in any special way. The logo is really tough to read, and every single card has a nickname for the player, which I don't know if it is the nicknames for any of these players or not, but that's the thing, is it throws you off where you look at it and you go, well, what exactly is it? Well, they're League Leader cards, which, okay, sure, that works well enough, but it's kind of that Stadium Club feel, or 94 Stadium Club feel. It's not the best design they had in the world. And then they had two subsets for players who were great under the paint or great in the outside. So basically the two different peripheral areas of the basketball court. Paint Patrol was for the players inside, and you'll notice that on the card back, it's done more like a Stadium Club card where it's about statistics. There's no write-up on these cards. They just have some statistics so that you know that this guy is really dominant in different categories. Likewise, the Perimeter Patrol is, well, basically the same thing, except for the outside, but in this case, the design is flipped around, which is good because for a sharpshooter on the outside, you want the rafters to be open. So this is actually really good design work that they created, where for paint you have the hoop up above, and then for out on the perimeter you have the rafters up above, you have nothing above. So actually they did some interesting design work with these. But the subset that is the most interesting isn't really a subset as much as a theme, but it's a callback from the early 80s, especially in football. They're in-action cards where a card had to show a picture of a player. Well, they couldn't print it in the back in the 1980s, so every single card front had to be a portrait of some sort. You could have a player in his helmet, but, well, you just couldn't do good action shots. So in the 80s, they had, whether it was super action or in action or whatever type of action, they would have a card of the player, and then they would have a follow-up card of the player, but it wasn't the player card, it was a separate in-action card. Well, they did that here in a different way, which is From the Roof. And the From the Roof cards are shots looking straight down at the hoop. So the background is the key, the different colors of the key. And you have usually the player silhouetted, but not always. He's going for a rebound or a dunk or something right around the rim. And so you got these amazing top-down views that are just really, really impressive. And like I said, these are cards that follow the player. So you have Charles Barkley, and then you have his From the Roof card. That is the very next card in the set, which adds a little bit of interest as you're going through. Personally, just speaking personally, I'd love for these to have been grouped together as a subset, but still it is kind of interesting to go through the set and then all of a sudden there's one of these cards that just kind of pops out on its own, even though it's right next to the player who is featured on the From the Roof card. But that was the set. And Topps was finally starting to figure out this whole, we need to do more than just parallel cards kind of thing. We need to do inserts. And I don't know why, because in baseball, in the rack packs, they had inserts. In football and in hockey, they had inserts. And then in the early years of the 90s, 92, 93, they got away from that. I really don't know why. And so in 1994, they were finally bringing it back, and it's about time. But they did only have 3 insert sets in basketball. The first one is Franchise Futures, and that is franchise/future. It's a card set of 10 or 20 cards that comprise 10 teams. Every single team has a veteran, and it has a young superstar, rookie, or a second-year card, a second-year player. Each one of these cards has a silhouetted player, so the background is almost completely darkened around him. And then the text is a spectral gold holofoil. It has an interesting quality to it that's just kind of a little punch over on the side. Not much too dominant, but it allows the cards to feel special. But like I said, it's 10 teams featuring 2 players from each. So you have the veteran, and then you also have either a rookie or a second-year player, a young superstar. So you get to see the old guard and the new guard at the same time, whether it's a passing of the tradition or, I mean, Shaq and Penny Hardaway both show up in the set, and Shaq was still a young superstar at the time. So still, there was not quite veteran as much as this is the young guy coming up to stand alongside the player who had already kind of locked himself into the league. That was the first set. And then they had Own the Game. Now, Own the Game was one of the first experiential card, almost like a contest cards. It wasn't a contest card as much as it was a card that was built around who was going to win in a category. Now, Stadium Club had already been doing this with their super teams, where you would have all of the teams in the league, and then whichever team won the Super Bowl or the finals or the World Series, that team, the card for that team, could be exchanged for a complete set of the entire set with the stamp on it. That was over in Stadium Club. Well, over in Topps, they decided to do what they called Own the Game, which is about statistics. They have 5 statistics, 10 cards for each of the statistics, 9 players and a field card. These 50 cards are all cards based upon whoever wins the statistic, you send that card in, you get cards in return. The contest card is a card where they have a shot of the player, and the whole background is designed like an electric glowing effect that's really difficult to create and really kind of intriguing. It's actually pretty cool the way that it comes across. And then they have the category on the side, super whatever, they were really into super at this point. Gold foil text down at the bottom for the player name, and then of course all the write-up about entering the contest on the back. But entering the contest is not that you enter a contest as much as you send in the winning cards. So like I said, there are 45 different player cards featured in the set, but not that many players. Different players have different numbers of cards, so John Stockton has 2. He's an assist leader and he's a steals leader at this time, even though he didn't win the steals that year, as I recall. But he did win assists, so he had 2 cards in this. Akeem the Dream Olajuwon, he had a card for blocking and he had a card for rebounds. And then there were also, for scoring, you can see the field card. Every single one of the 5 categories did have a field card, which is a wild card for if none of these 9 guys won it, then whoever did win it, you send that in. So that means that, like in the case of Shaq, he had 3 cards. The Dream had 2, Stockton had 2. Most players only had 1 card. So it's a varied number of cards for each individual player. But each one of the winner cards could be sent in for a complete 10-card set, so you have the number 1 and number 2 players in each category. And the big thing about these cards, of course, is the card back, where on the card back, you get to see the statistics for all the top 5 players, and in this case, you get to see just how ridiculously dominant John Stockton was at assists, where he was in a whole nother category. All that crap about Isaiah Thomas being a better point guard than John Stockton is just ridiculous. As you can see, this guy was just in a whole nother category. But on the front, that's where the card is the most distinct, really, because it has that same chrome finish over the background like you saw with the Spectrite cards in the main card set, although they don't have the holofoil, the gold holofoil on it. But at any rate, that was Own the Game. But they did have one other insert set which is even more distinct than that, which is their Super Sophomores. Once again, they really were into Super. And for the Super Sophomore cards, these used the finest technology, but the cards are not designed like finest. They're designed like what we would eventually see as Topps Chrome. These are thinner cards. There are no parallels to this. There's not a refractor version. It's just standalone cards for each one of these second-year players. And unfortunately, because it's the same technology, these cards do have the same aging issue that we got to, shall I say, enjoy in Topps Finest. These cards definitely have that issue as well. But that is the 1994-95 Topps basketball card set. It's not the most exciting thing in the world, but Topps never really was the most exciting thing in the world. They were always making a very quality card set, and here they had a cross between quality cards and some kind of crazy ideas, but you could see that they're finally starting to have fun with the work that they're doing. I mean, all three of these insert sets were very distinct, very new, and very cutting edge, and I give them all the credit in the world for that. This is a card set that shows that Topps was finally becoming a different card company, and it was about time. I'm glad that they did. Now, 1995 is a very different story, and I'll be getting to that in a separate video, so definitely look out for that. If you haven't seen the lead up of all of the Topps sets for basketball that have led up to here, definitely go check those out. I've already done everything leading up to 1994. If you haven't subscribed, I do urge you to do so. And, well, yeah, thank you very much for watching.